The capture. The rain fell in heavy sheets across the abandoned mining station on Kepler 442b, turning the red dust into crimson mud that clung to everything it touched. Commander Thane Cross adjusted his tactical visor and swept his pulse rifle across the maze of broken machinery and collapsed support beams. 3 days of hunting, and finally, he had cornered his prey. She crouched behind an overturned transport vessel, her breathing ragged and desperate. Even in the dim light filtering through the storm clouds, Thane could see the distinctive violet markings that ran along her arms and neck, the ceremonial tattoos of a Nexari warrior. Her once pristine combat suit was torn and stained, revealing glimpses of pale blue skin beneath. Dark hair, wet from the rain, hung in tangled strands around a face that spoke of both fierce pride and crushing defeat. When she finally looked up at him, her golden eyes held a mixture of defiance and something else entirely, a desperate hope that made Thane's chest tighten unexpectedly. "Please," she whispered, her voice carrying the melodic accent of her people despite its tremor. "I know what you humans do to captured warriors, but I can offer you something else." Her hands shook as she slowly raised them, palms open in surrender. "I will bear you strong children. I will serve faithfully. Just, please don't send me to the processing centers." Thane felt his weapon lower slightly without conscious thought. In all his years commanding human forces against alien threats, he had never heard a Nexari beg. They were known throughout the galaxy as fearless fighters who would rather die than surrender. The woman before him represented everything the Coalition had taught him to fear, a perfect killing machine bred for war. Yet here she was, offering herself in the most vulnerable way possible. "Stand up," he commanded, keeping his voice steady. Slowly, she obeyed, rising to her full height, which brought her eyes nearly level with his. Even disheveled and defeated, she carried herself with an unconscious grace that spoke of years of combat training. Scars crisscrossed her exposed skin, evidence of countless battles fought and survived. This was no ordinary prisoner. "What's your designation?" Thane asked, circling her slowly while maintaining a safe distance. His scanner indicated no weapons, but Nexari warriors were dangerous even empty-handed. I was Zara Vex, First Blade of the Nexari Third Fleet." Her voice grew quieter with each word. "Now I am nothing. No rank, no unit, no purpose." Thane paused in his circling. First Blade was the highest combat rank among Nexari forces, equivalent to a human general. The woman before him had likely commanded thousands of warriors, directed planetary sieges, and earned her position through skill that few could match. The Coalition's intelligence files on Nexari First Blades read like horror stories, unstoppable, forces of destruction that could turn the tide of entire campaigns. "The Third Fleet was destroyed 6 months ago," he said, testing her reaction. "Coalition forces reported no survivors." Something flickered across Zara's features, pain so raw and immediate that Thane instinctively stepped back. "There were survivors," she said quietly. 17 of us made it to the escape pods, but the Coalition found our emergency beacon." Her golden eyes met his directly. "They executed the others as war criminals. I alone escaped into the deep void." The rain continued to pound the station's broken roof, filling the silence between them. Thane found himself studying her face, searching for deception, and finding only exhaustion. His tactical training screamed warnings about Nexari trickery, about their ability to manipulate human emotions. But something deeper, more instinctive, recognized the authenticity of her despair. "You've been running for 6 months," he said, not quite a question. "Hiding, stealing, surviving on scraps and hope." Zara's hands dropped to her sides. "I thought I could reach the neutral zones, find passage to the outer rim. But Coalition patrols are everywhere. There is nowhere left to run." Thane activated his comm device with a gesture, preparing to call in the capture. Standard protocol demanded immediate transport to the nearest Coalition processing facility. Nexari prisoners were too dangerous to hold locally, too valuable as intelligence sources to eliminate quickly. The reward for capturing a first blade would set him up for early retirement. His finger hovered over the transmission key. I was not always a warrior, Zara said suddenly, as if sensing his hesitation. Before the war, I was a scholar. I studied human poetry, your literature, your music. I found beauty in the way your species creates meaning from suffering. She took a careful step closer. I know you think we are monsters. Perhaps you are right. But I also know that humans are capable of unexpected mercy. Mercy? Thane's voice came out harsher than intended. Your fleets glassed 3 human colonies, millions dead, including civilians. Yes. The word fell from her lips like a stone. I led those attacks. I followed orders and convinced myself they were necessary for my people's survival. Her voice cracked slightly. Now my people are scattered, broken, hiding in the dark spaces between stars. The war cost us everything, just as it cost you. Thane found himself lowering his weapon completely. Why tell me this? Why not lie, claim innocence? Because I am tired of lies, tired of fighting, tired of being afraid. Zara's golden eyes glistened with unshed tears. When I offered to bear your children, I meant it. Not from strategy or desperation alone, but because I have forgotten what it means to create instead of destroy. The words hit Thane like a physical blow. He had spent 3 years hunting Nexari remnants, driven by duty and carefully cultivated hatred. But looking at the broken woman before him, he saw something he had never expected to find in an enemy. Genuine remorse, and beneath that, a hope so fragile it seemed ready to shatter at a word. His comm device beeped insistently, awaiting orders. Coalition Command would be expecting his report soon. If he delayed much longer, they would send backup teams to investigate. The smart move, the safe move, was to call it in and collect his reward. Instead, Thane found himself asking, "What's your real name?" Not your warrior designation, your name. Surprise flickered across her features. Zara. Just Zara. I'm Thane. He deactivated his comm device entirely. And I think we need to talk. For the first time since he had cornered her, Zara's expression shifted towards something that might have been hope. The rain continued to fall around them, washing away the red dust of a dead world, while 2 former enemies began an entirely different kind of conversation than either had expected. The choice. The storm had passed by the time Thane finished listening to Zara's story. They sat across from each other in the shelter of an abandoned processing hub, sharing rations from his pack while she spoke of her life before the war, of libraries filled with texts from a dozen worlds, of quiet days spent translating human poetry into Nexari verse, of a younger sister who had dreamed of becoming a healer instead of a warrior. Her name was Lyra, Zara said softly, staring at the empty ration container in her hands. She was supposed to stay on the homeworld when the fleets launched, but the Coalition attacked our orbital stations first, and the debris. She closed her eyes. They said the impact was instantaneous, that she wouldn't have suffered. Thane felt something twist in his chest. I'm sorry. Are you? The question wasn't accusatory, just curious. Your species has every reason to celebrate Nexari deaths. Maybe. He leaned back against the metal wall, studying her face in the dim emergency lighting. But watching someone grieve, that's universal, isn't it? Pain is pain, regardless of who's feeling it. Zara looked up at him with those golden eyes that seemed to hold entire galaxies. When I offered myself to you earlier, it wasn't just survival instinct. The Nexari, we bond deeply when we choose to. If you had accepted, I would have meant every word. The honesty in her voice made Thane's pulse quicken in a way that had nothing to do with combat adrenaline. And now? Now I'm hoping you're the kind of man who might choose something different. She set the container aside and moved closer, not seductively, but with the careful deliberation of someone making a crucial decision. I'm hoping you might choose to see me as more than a prize to be claimed or a threat to be eliminated. Thane's hand moved instinctively toward his sidearm, then stopped. Old habits warred with something newer, more complex. The Coalition has protocols for dealing with your kind. I know. Zara's voice remained steady. Question me until I break, extract whatever intelligence they can, then execute me as a war criminal. It's what I would do in their position. But you haven't called them yet. She leaned forward, and he caught a scent like ozone and starlight. 3 hours you've had me cornered, and your comm device hasn't even chirped with an outgoing signal. Why? Thane found himself without an easy answer. Military discipline demanded one course of action. Everything he had been trained to believe about Nexari warriors demanded another. But sitting here, listening to her speak about her sister and her lost hopes, he was beginning to understand that his assumptions might have been dangerously incomplete. Maybe because executing the last scholar warrior in the galaxy seems like a waste, he said finally. Something shifted in Zara's expression, surprise giving way to something deeper and more dangerous. Scholar warrior. No one has called me that in years. Is that what you were? Before all this? It's what I could be again. She moved closer still, close enough that he could see the intricate patterns of her ceremonial tattoos, the way they seemed to shimmer with their own inner light, if someone gave me the chance. Thane's breath caught as she reached out slowly, telegraphing her movements, and placed her palm against his cheek. Her skin was warm, alien, but undeniably alive. Zara, I know this is madness, she whispered. Two enemies finding something unexpected in the ruins of war. But madness might be exactly what we both need. Before he could respond, she kissed him. It was gentle at first, tentative, asking permission rather than demanding. When he didn't pull away, it deepened into something that tasted of desperation and impossible hope. When they finally broke apart, Thane rested his forehead against hers. If we do this, there's no going back. The Coalition will consider me a traitor. Your own people, what's left of them, might see you as a collaborator. Then we'll build something new, Zara said simply. Something that belongs to neither of our old worlds. Thane pulled back to look at her fully. In her golden eyes, he saw not the fearsome warrior of Coalition propaganda, but a woman who had lost everything and was offering him the chance to find something neither of them had known they were looking for. His comm device activated with a soft chime indicating an incoming priority message from Coalition Command. Time was running out. In minutes, backup teams would arrive to investigate his silence. He had to choose, duty or something infinitely more complex and dangerous. Thane smiled and crushed the comm device under his boot. My ship is hidden in the canyon 2 clicks east, he said, standing and offering her his hand. It's fast, and I know routes the Coalition doesn't patrol. We can be off-world before they know I've gone rogue. Zara stared at his outstretched hand as if it were the most precious thing in the universe. When she took it, her fingers intertwined with his like they had been waiting their whole lives for this moment. Where will we go? She asked as they gathered their gear. Somewhere beyond the war zones, beyond Coalition space and what's left of Nexari territory. Thane checked his weapon and sealed his pack. Somewhere we can decide who we want to be without the weight of old grudges. They moved through the abandoned station like shadows, past the ghosts of a mining operation that had once linked worlds in peaceful trade. At the exit, Zara paused and looked back. Regrets? Thane asked. Only that it took us so long to find each other. She squeezed his hand. And that my sister will never get to meet the human who chose love over revenge. Together, they disappeared into the alien dawn of a world caught between stars, leaving behind everything they had been to discover what they might become. The war that had defined both their lives was ending not with victory or defeat, but with the simple radical act of two people choosing to see the person behind the enemy. In the distance, Coalition ships began their descent toward the mining station, but they would find only empty rooms and the echo of choices that changed everything. The galaxy's fiercest warrior and the commander who had hunted her were already light years away, writing the first pages of a story that belonged entirely to them. As their ship cleared the atmosphere and jumped to hyperspace, Zara placed her hand over Thane's on the controls. Thank you. she said quietly. For what? For seeing me. For choosing to believe that even warriors can learn to love. In the blue glow of hyperspace, former enemies became something new, something that transcended the boundaries of species and conflict. The war might have ended, but their story, their real story, was just beginning. New beginnings. Conclusion. The morning sun of Kepler 438c painted the sky in shades of amber and rose that neither Thane nor Zara had ever seen before. 2 years had passed since their ship touched down in the fertile valley that would become their home, and the simple dwelling they had built with their own hands now stood surrounded by gardens that bloomed with both earth and Nexari flora, a living symbol of 2 worlds learning to grow together. Zara knelt in the garden, her hands deep in the rich soil as she tended to the delicate spiral-leafed plants she had cultivated from seeds preserved in her escape pod. The violet tattoos on her arms had faded to barely visible traces, replaced by new marks. The golden tan of honest work under an alien sun, small scars from learning to farm, and the soft glow that seemed to emanate from within whenever she was truly happy. The morning glory is blooming, she called to Thane, who was reinforcing the fence around their property. Just like you said it would. He paused in his work and smiled, watching her move among the plants with the same careful precision she had once applied to military strategy. Your sister would have loved seeing this, he said softly. Zara's hands stilled for a moment. Even now, memories of Lyra could catch her unexpectedly, but the pain had transformed into something gentler, a warm ache that spoke of love rather than loss. She would have loved you, she replied. She always said the bravest warriors were those who chose to heal instead of harm. Their conversation was interrupted by the distant hum of an approaching transport. Visitors were rare in their remote corner of the colony, and both of them tensed instinctively before remembering that they were no longer fugitives. The small craft that landed in their clearing bore the medical insignia of New Haven's Colonial Health Service. Dr. Amelia Santos emerged from the transport, her kind face beaming with barely contained excitement. She had become not just their physician, but one of their closest friends, one of the few people who knew their true history and had chosen to see them as they were now, rather than what they had been. I bring news, she announced without preamble, her dark eyes dancing with joy. The genetic compatibility tests came back. Everything looks perfect, more than perfect, actually. The cellular integration patterns are remarkable. Zara rose slowly from the garden, soil still clinging to her hands, her golden eyes wide with understanding. Thane dropped his tools and crossed to her side, his arm sliding protectively around her waist. Are you saying, he began. I'm saying that the little one you've been hoping for is on the way, Dr. Santos confirmed with a grin. About 6 weeks along, if my calculations are correct. Congratulations, both of you. The words seemed to hang in the morning air like a blessing. Zara's hand moved instinctively to her still flat abdomen, wonder spreading across her features. This was what she had offered Thane in desperation that day in the mining station, the promise of children. But this was different. This was chosen, planned, wanted with every fiber of their beings. A baby, Zara whispered, as if saying the words aloud would make them more real. Thane pulled her closer, his voice thick with emotion. Our baby. Dr. Santos tactfully busied herself with unpacking monitoring equipment while the couple absorbed the news. She had delivered many babies in her career, but there was something special about this one, not just because it represented the first successful human Nexari pregnancy on record, but because it was born from love that had conquered seemingly impossible odds. There will be challenges, she said gently when they finally turned their attention back to her. Interspecies pregnancy is uncharted territory. We'll need to monitor both of you closely, adjust nutrition protocols, perhaps modify some standard procedures. Whatever it takes, Thane said immediately. Whatever you need. I expected nothing less. Dr. Santos began setting up her portable scanner. The good news is that both your species have remarkably similar gestation periods and basic Physiology. The baby should develop normally, though we might see some interesting combinations of traits. As the doctor worked, checking Zara's vitals and taking detailed scans, Thane found himself thinking about the future with startling clarity. Their child would grow up in a world without the prejudices that had shaped their parents' lives. Human and Nexari colonists worked side by side in New Haven's fields and workshops, their children playing together without any awareness that their species had once been at war. "Strong heartbeat," Dr. Santos announced, adjusting her scanner. "And look at this." The holographic display showed a tiny form, barely recognizable as humanoid, but unmistakably alive. Zara gasped softly, her free hand reaching for Thane's. Together they stared at their child's first portrait, a swirl of light and possibility suspended in medical imaging. "Beautiful," Zara breathed. "Perfect," Thane agreed. Dr. Santos finished her examination and began packing her equipment. "I'll want to see you both in 2 weeks for follow-up scans. And Zara, no more heavy lifting in the garden. That's what you have a devoted partner for." After the doctor departed, Thane and Zara found themselves alone with the magnitude of what was happening. They walked together through their garden, past the hybrid plants that represented their separate heritages, learning to flourish in the same soil. "I'm scared," Zara admitted as they settled on the bench Thane had built beneath their favorite shade tree. "Not of the pregnancy itself, but of, what if I don't know how to be a mother? What if the warrior in me is too strong?" Thane took her, hands in his, studying the fingers that had once wielded weapons with deadly precision and now coaxed life from the earth with infinite gentleness. "The warrior in you is exactly what our child will need," he said firmly. "Not to fight battles, but to protect what matters, to stand up for what's right, to be brave when courage is required." "And you?" she asked. "Are you ready to be a father?" He considered the question seriously. "I spent years following orders, believing that duty meant destroying things that threatened the status quo. Now I understand that real duty means creating something worth protecting." He placed his hand over hers on her abdomen. "Teaching our child to see beyond the boundaries that divided us. Showing them that love is stronger than hate, that understanding conquers fear." They sat in comfortable silence as the alien sun climbed higher in the sky. Around them, the sounds of their adopted world painted a symphony of peace. Bird-like creatures singing in the trees, the distant laughter of colonist children, the gentle whisper of wind through hybrid crops that fed both human and Nexari families. "What should we name them?" Zara asked eventually. "Something that honors both our peoples," Thane suggested. "Something that speaks to the future, rather than the past." "Lyra," Zara said softly. "If it's a girl. To remember that healing is possible, that dreams can survive even when the dreamer doesn't. And if it's a boy." Zara smiled. "Marcus, it's a strong human name, but in Nexari the sounds mean bridge between worlds. Lyra or Marcus Crossvex," Thane said, testing how the names sounded together. "I like it." As evening approached, they prepared dinner together, in their small kitchen, a daily ritual that had become sacred to them both. Thane chopped vegetables from their garden while Zara prepared the protein synthesizer, their movements synchronized from months of practice. They talked about practical things, expanding the house before the baby arrived, converting the spare room into a nursery, teaching their child to speak both standard and Nexari. But beneath the ordinary planning lay something extraordinary. The knowledge that they were creating not just a family, but a living symbol of possibility. Their child would carry the genetic heritage of 2 species that had once tried to destroy each other, raised by parents who had chosen love over loyalty to old hatreds. That night, as they lay together in the bed they had built from local timber, Zara curled against Thane's side with her head on his chest. The silver pendant that had once belonged to her sister rested between them, warm from his skin. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you had called in my capture that day?" she asked quietly. "No," Thane replied without hesitation. "Because it doesn't matter. This is what happened. This is what we chose. The galaxy's fiercest fighter, Zara murmured with gentle humor. Brought low by a human commander with a kind heart. Brought low or lifted up? She tilted her head to look at him in the soft starlight filtering through their window. Lifted up. Definitely lifted up. Outside their home, the night creatures of Kepler 438c began their evening songs. In the distance, the lights of New Haven's central district twinkled like earthbound stars. Their neighbors, human, Nixari, and a dozen other species, were settling in for peaceful sleep, their children safe in beds built far from the shadows of ancient wars. And in a modest house surrounded by gardens where two worlds learned to grow as one, former enemies held each other close and dreamed of the child who would be born free from the conflicts that had defined their parents' past. The baby growing within Zara would never know a universe where love was limited by species, where understanding was impossible, where the greatest warriors were those who destroyed rather than those who created. Their war was over. Their love had won. And tomorrow would dawn on a future brighter than either of them had ever dared to imagine. In the gentle darkness of their shared home, Thane and Zara slept peacefully, their hands intertwined over the new life they had made together. A bridge between worlds, a symbol of hope and proof that even in the vast cold of space, love could bloom in the most unexpected places and transform everything it touched. The galaxy's fiercest fighter had become something infinitely more powerful. A mother, a partner, a gardener of possibilities. And the commander who had once hunted her now held their future gently in his arms, guardian of dreams that transcended every boundary the universe had tried to place between them. Their story was complete, but their life together, and the life of the child who would carry both their legacies forward, was just beginning.